Dear South Africans, we need to open our eyes right now. Do you know why? Because Donald Trump is in the mission to make South Africa look like Zimbabwe.
And now South Africa is on the fast track to becoming Zimbabwe.
Guys, I don't know who needed to watch this, but I feel like sharing this video with you because there is a fire in the mountain.
Welcome to the United States of America.
Why this group is being welcomed, while others from conflict zones like Sudan and the Congo are turned away.
Guys, since these Afrikaners have landed in America, these have divided Americans because they are now having different opinions and they are coming out in their numbers to express themselves on how they feel about all this situation.
Tell him to be kind to everyone, regardless of the skin color, regardless of if they're disabled, regardless of if they have or they don't.
I think it's very unfair that he wants to deport other people, but you want to bring in other people. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Donald Trump is chartering a plane using U.S. taxpayer money to bring refugees from South Africa to America. Now let's think about this for just one moment. What is the same about all these South African refugees that we might notice? They're all white people. That's right. And so when we talk about deporting people, it appears that they're mostly non-white. But we can bring in South Africans who are white. And I just can't shake this feeling. I just can't shake this feeling that maybe, and I'm not saying it, I don't know, I'm not there, I'm not in the room when these conversations occur. It seems to me that it's possible that these guys in the White House are motivated by certain aspects of these people that they're bringing in and taking out. I'm not saying it's true.
When Donald Trump sends in white South Africans, he's not sending us their best, all right? He's sending us their failures, he's sending us their crybabies, and some, I assume, are really good people.
Sending private planes to pick up 8,000 Caucasian South African refugees when we're kicking people out that are in the middle of their immigration proceedings here in the U.S. now. Literally having people show up for their final steps of their immigration process and having them arrested, detained, and deported. Doesn't make any sense to me unless
we built apartheid, and now we're refugees. We took the land, we took people's futures, we took their dignity, and now we're being given refuge? What must it feel like to be a person of color, a black person in South Africa, watching my people who broke this country and now run off to claim victimhood somewhere else? We say we're afraid, but we built what we were afraid of. In 1994, we didn't give over power, we just gave over the mess and said, it's your fault, you deal with it now. But our white hands are clean. And now we're fleeing the country crying reverse racism. So black South African, please tell the bad guy right here how it makes you feel. Because this is not right. This is sick. And I don't want to be the perpetrator anymore.
To all of these South African, Afrikaans refugees that are coming to America soon, I just want to let you know, as someone whose wife is Afrikaans, who's been to South Africa multiple times, you're gonna have a bad time. There's no white genocide happening in South Africa. You have crime that's happening as a result of racism-fueled generational economic inequality, the same thing that's happening in America. We're just a couple decades ahead of you on the unchecked capitalism timeline. But I have good news for you. You don't have to worry about the cheap exploited labor rising up against you anymore, because now that you're in America, you'll get to be the cheap exploited labor. If you were middle class or upper middle class in South Africa and you come to America, you're poor now. Like, really poor. You're not gonna have maids and gardeners and personal servants that you can pay $15 a day for. Now you get to be the cheap labor. But by all means, please come to America and experience the American capitalism that Elon Musk's been raving about to you. You'll probably love it. You know, what do I know? There's probably very little chance that you'll end up going back to South Africa in a year or two after realizing how overpriced and fucked up America is. I wouldn't even worry about that as a possibility. And if you think I'm being mean to these people because I think they're a bunch of racist, bigoted colonizers who wish they could go back to apartheid South Africa. It's just because I do think that. But to them, I say, welcome to the American dream.
Deeply and morally wrong-headed and repulsive. These are the descendants of the people who created the most diabolical system of white supremacy in human history, apartheid. They're not directly responsible for it, but it was a system that actually moved black people off of the arable land. So they inherited the land that the black people had to give up. It was called forced removal. It was something called the Bantustan policy, where they moved black people out of the cities and farmlands into these remote areas with non-arable land. I mean, it was just one of the most worst processes ever. But what has happened in this strange, bizarre world we're living in is that the Afrikaners have become the darling of these right-wing, white supremacist movements around the world. Trump amazingly called it a genocide, one of the worst lies I've ever heard him say. There's just been a small handful of farmers that have been killed over the past 10 years. No land has actually been expropriated.
There is no white genocide. White people are hugely privileged, and that is our failure. I spoke to some matriculants from Hanover Park, I think about 10 days ago, and I actually got tearful when I said to them that I apologize on behalf of my generation, that we haven't done more to dismantle the long tentacles of apartheid.
Yes, indeed, Americans seem to be not happy about this whole entire situation, which is being created by Donald Trump and his boss, Elon Musk.
His name is Elon Musk. Elon Musk.
Because we all know the refugee international rules, how it goes in order for you to seek for an asylum or refugee status in any country around the world. And this seems to be something which Donald Trump does not to apply. Do you know why? Because this video I'm about to play for you is going to explain it even more better about who deserves to be a refugee.
There's an act passed by Congress called the Refugee Act, which allows for as many as 125,000 refugees in this fiscal year. People who can prove they're being persecuted or fear persecution because of race or religion or political beliefs. And nowhere near that number has been allowed in by the time Mr. Trump took office and shut it all down. But just a few weeks later, President Trump announced that he was making an exception, and not only that, he would expedite the processing of refugee claims by one group of people from Africa. Now, you might think it's some women and children who've been maybe sexually assaulted in the conflict in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, a place that's seen fighting for decades. On this program, we reported on the violence that plighted people there in a series of programs in 2006.
What has gone on here is simply extraordinary. Over the last 10 years here, there has been major fighting between a number of different groups. It has been the deadliest war in our lifetime, the deadliest war since World War II. Some 3 to 4 million people have died in this country, and their deaths have virtually gone unnoticed.
And there's a whole new round of fighting that's been going on in eastern Congo between the government and an armed group called M23. Thousands have died, hundreds of thousands displaced, and widespread reports of sexual violence against women. But President Trump hasn't allowed refugees from there here, nor from Sudan, where there's been terrible fighting. The only Africans President Trump has paved a quick path for are these South Africans. And yes, they are white. They are Afrikaners, descendants of Dutch settlers to South Africa. This is the first group of people granted refugee status to enter the U.S. since the president entered his second term. On February 7th, President Trump signed this executive order carving out an exception for the Afrikaners, the white minority who created the racist apartheid regime in South Africa and ruled there cruelly and brutally until 1994. When black South Africans, the overwhelming majority of South Africans, were allowed to vote for the first time, and they voted for that man, Nelson Mandela. Afrikaners took land from black people in South Africa, repressed them, and in the 3 decades since the end of apartheid, they still have all the land they took. Black South Africans, who make up over 80% of the population, still only own around 4% of private land. Let me just go back to Sudan for a moment. An actual genocide has happened there, according to the U.S., as 2 warring factions battled for control of that country earlier this year. The U.S. accused one side, the RSF, of committing genocide. More than 11 million people have been internally displaced, while millions more have fled the country. That's according to the UN. They aren't allowed to be refugees here.
We all know what it takes in order for you to be a refugee around the world. And looking at these Afrikaners, there is no any signs of them being people who are fleeing for their life, being in danger. Look at this illustration I have made for you. These are people who are the true victims of genocide. On the other side, we are having these Afrikaners who call themselves as the people who are victims of genocide, but in the reality, there is no such a thing, because looking at them, they look very healthy and they have traveled in a very good conditions, as you can see from these pictures.
What's happening in South Africa fits the textbook definition of why the refugee program was created. This is persecution based on a protected characteristic, in this case race. So this is race-based persecution. The refugee program is not intended as a solution for global poverty, and historically it has been used that way. Wherever there's global poverty or wherever there's dysfunctional governments, then the U.S. refugee program comes in, swoops people up, relocates them to America.
Countries such as the Democratic Republic of Congo, which had the conflict which has been going on there for more than 3 decades. South Sudan, which we all know that there is a civil war. Yet these countries are countries which Donald Trump had rejected them from entering the US country. Instead, he called them names. For example, Donald Trump described Congolese saying that they are criminals, they are committing crimes, and that's why they are coming to the US. Which is not true, because we all know that Congolese are not like that.
Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. The situation in the Democratic Republic of the Congo is getting worse, even though President John Lorenzo has been mediating the conflict between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo because he wants to bring peace and stability. The situation is really bad right now. I want to hear from Ms. President if you have any plan in the future to bring peace in the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Well, you're asking me a question about Rwanda, and it is a very serious problem. I agree, but I don't think it's appropriate right now to talk about it, but it is a very serious problem.
The victims of the true genocide, they are not welcome in the US, but people who are relaxed, people who are in the possession of the land of South Africans, people who are doing good, whether it's financial or anything, that the one that Donald Trump get to consider as the true genocider. Donald Trump is deporting other nations in the US, even those who were born over there. He kind of like giving them a hard time and closing the borders for all these people to not enter the US. Yet is opening the borders for the US to welcome these so-called Afrikaners who are being persecuted in South Africa, according to Donald Trump, even though he does not have proof.
There is no genocide going on against white people in South Africa. No, they can no longer enslave Africans and enjoy their life in the way that they did during the apartheid, era. But that doesn't mean that they're being killed. That doesn't mean that they qualify for refugee status.
Nick, you say this whole situation upside down. The idea that there's a genocide of white farmers. I mean, why do you think the Trump administration is doing this?
Well, I mean, he's completely turned refugee policy upside down in ways that reflect racial discrimination. I mean, he's not, the Afrikaner farmers are not suffering from that. It is true that some have been murdered, but black farmers have been murdered at even higher rates. And,
there's a huge crime rate in South Africa. Crime is a huge problem. But according to organizations there's been no forcible taking back of confiscation of land at this point.
Not at all. And, it is true that there was legislation passed in January that theoretically creates an opportunity to confiscate some land without compensation. That has not been implemented. Nobody has had their land taken away. And these Afrikaners are among the most privileged people on the entire continent. They are they are assets, or the white South Africans have assets 20 times greater than those of black South Africans on average.
They only want white people here, because when we think about refugees who need immediate resettlement, expedited screenings, we usually think about people who are fleeing extreme violence, persecution, famine, war in places like South Sudan, Myanmar, the Congo, not white Afrikaners. See that chartered plane the Trump administration is sending? It's not going to collect refugees that have been sitting in resettlement camps for years, fully vetted, waiting to come to the United States to escape violence. No, it's going to South Africa to collect white people who claim they're being discriminated against. Why would they be getting discriminated against? Probably because they spent generations instituting legalized forms of racial segregation and discrimination called apartheid, aka Stephen Miller's wet dream. See, while the rest of the world after World War II saw that maybe racial discrimination not such a hot idea and favored more policies of integration and away from colonization, Afrikaners doubled down on that shit and instituted apartheid. Although it ended over 30 years ago, the social and economic legacies of apartheid continue today. South Africa is the most unequal country in the entire world, according to the World Bank, with white South Africans earning over 12 times what black South Africans do. But don't worry, we're going to make sure that the white Afrikaners who instituted generations of discrimination and segregation against black people get everything they need to get started here in the United States in their new life.
Trump is giving this kind of treatment only to white South Africans and not even to other black South Africans or black Africans, since we're talking about Africans. And when he's being asked this question in the media to know why is he making them feel so special compared to any other person who seek this refugee status, well, this is what Donald Trump had to say.
Farmers are being killed. They happen to be white. But whether they're white or black makes no difference to me. But white farmers are being brutally killed, and their land is being confiscated in South Africa. And the newspapers and the media, television media, doesn't even talk about it.
Look, guys, I don't know who needs to hear this. I don't know who needs to pass this message to the government of the ANC under the leadership of President Ramaphosa. Guys, we need to open our eyes on this kind of acts. The government of South Africa needs to understand what is up to happen. Because if we neglect this, trust me, we're gonna regret, because these people, they are up to something. As we all know that Trump is not doing these things on his own. Trump is doing it out of anger. Trump is trying to punish South Africa for supporting Palestine when they needed South Africa to support Israel. Trump is trying to punish South Africa, all because South Africa decided to take Israel to the International Criminal Court. Trump is trying to punish South Africa, all because of the kind of conflict which they believe that is going to benefit them the most and make South Africa look like a bad country. To finish, Trump is doing all this because they are in the mission to make South Africa look like Zimbabwe. Why do I say so? Because this Republican woman, she had said it all in this part.
Is there a genocide of white farmers?
Absolutely there is. In fact, in South Africa right now, 8 out of 10 of the markers of a genocide have already taken place. There have been story after horror story after horror story of generational farmers who are having their land seized, who are being murdered, innocent people. And we're talking about the sins of the father kind of crap that we've had to deal with in this country for these many years.
Meaning the colonizers who came to South Africa, these are their direct descendants.
Direct descendants, just like in this country, white people are continued to be blamed for something that happened 150 years ago.
That you did. Slavery is real.
Excuse me.
So is apartheid. Apartheid was real.
And apartheid is now over. And now South Africa is on the fast track to becoming Zimbabwe. So it's going really great over in South Africa.
Oh yes, that is a Republican. This lady, she have to come and make this kind of revelations on how they are planning to destroy South Africa and make South Africa look like Zimbabwe. Now, should the government of the ANC keep quiet about it? No. President Cyril Ramaphosa, I like what he had said before. He said that,
but we are not daunted to navigate our path through this world that constantly changes. We will not be deterred. We are, as South Africans, a resilient people, and we will not be bullied.
We will not be bullied. Yes. Now that Trump have taken his actions by not only cutting the funds which was coming to South African aid and start now welcoming this so-called Afrikaners without having enough evidence, well, I feel like the government of the ANC should not just limit themselves there. This time, they must take it also very far by addressing this matter more serious, by, for example, looking at the list of these people who went over there in America. Who are they? Where is their farmers? Everything they have which belongs to South Africans should be collected and put in the public interest. Number one. Number two, they must immediately lose their citizenship as South Africans, because they have sold out their soul to the devil. They have betrayed South Africans. They did not show that they are patriots of this country. They have accepted, and you see the way they are busy, so grateful to Donald Trump. They even putting their posters over there saying that thank you, Trump. Well, let them consider America as their new countries. But for the South African government, these people, they should be collect their citizenship. Why do I say so? Because if South Africa removes citizenship on these people, America must find another new land for them to give them. And that's going to be a big lesson for the rest of these boers who are over here in South Africa. Because they make all these things. They did their own lobbyings with AfriForum. They went and did all these kind of propagandas, which is not true, as we all know, that these people are not being killed. And if it's about them, if it's about them being killed, why is it all them who have to be killed? When there's so many South Africans which are being killed each and every day. These people, they are poor Afrikaners who want to remain in control, people who have committed a serious crime during the apartheid regime. Now that today they are no longer in the possession, or they don't have that courage or power to continue doing what they were doing before, well, they feel like, no, the United States of America is going to be a right place for them.
To the 50 Afrikaners who fled to the US, calling themselves refugees, you are not refugees. You are just a case study of white flight dressed up as martyrdom. You're not escaping violence, you're escaping equality. South Africa didn't chase you away. You ran. Yes, South Africa is one of the most violent countries in the world. Yes, brutality exists. But let's be honest, violence affects all communities, not just white farmers. Black, colored, Indian, and yes, white people are all targets of a national crime crisis. What we have is a breakdown in safety, not a white genocide. This is not ethnic cleansing, it's criminal collapse, and running to the US won't fix it. You are part of a 7% minority, but somehow still manages to control over 70% of the wealth. That is not persecution, that's privilege on a guilt trip. And let's be real, if we tried to relocate just half of the Afrikaans population, it would take decades, billions in logistics, and you'd still end up culturally homeless in a country that don't want your apartheid baggage. You're not brave, you're not victims. You're scared of a world where you don't get to be in charge, and that makes the rest of the Afrikaans community cringe, because you make us look weak. South Africa is broken, and it's our problem to solve. So if you don't have the spine to do so, stay gone.
You know, I really like it when I hear this boy, when he had to come and expose them. Because if you see this boy, he's also Afrikaners. So this is a kind of a message which we need to understand, that not all Afrikaners, they believe in this nonsense. Not all Afrikaners who buy this side of stories which comes from the AfriForum and Elon Musk and their friend Donald Trump. So, the more they denounce this kind of behaviors, we support people like this, because they're speaking the fact, they're speaking the truth. Guys, South Africa need to be united. We need to be united. Black, white, colored, Indians. We need to be united. And not let the outsider to come and tell us how to do things around, or to boss us around and tell us we should do this or should not do that. Trump, what he's doing, we all know Trump who he is. He's a man who does not think at all. He's a man who does not care, especially for black people. Trump is a racist. We all know that. So personally, I'm not surprised to see all these things. But we just need to find the proper way to stop this once for all. If President Ramaphosa keep quiet, it's not going to look good. But so far, I like for the fact that he came out in the media and said that these Afrikaners who have fled to America, they are cowards. And that's the truth. They are cowards. They know that they are lying, and they make up all these stories. So the only things the government of the ANC they need to do right now is to stop these things by telling everyone that if you go, we take your citizenship away. You go forever. Don't come back to South Africa even for visit. Yes, because you are no longer a South African. Go to America. From America, find yourself another place where you can go, where you can go back where your ancestors came from. Because we don't need, yes, we love Africans, we love white Africans and all these kind of things, but we don't love racists. We're not gonna sit here and encourage racists taking place all over. So if there's this kind of white people who have this kind of behaviors, we rather isolate ourselves from them and keep those ones who sees us as a human.
I've lived in 5 different countries in Africa. I've lived in Malawi, Botswana, Zambia, Morocco, and Nigeria. I have also traveled extensively in South Africa, Zimbabwe, Namibia, and Egypt. Never once in all my years of living or traveling on the African continent have I been mistreated in any way because of my ethnicity, because of my skin color.
Those ones who we can have that mutual respect and treat each other and see this beautiful country like the only place where we have that we need to look after all of us instead of us being divided. I believe the message is loud and clear. Everyone, they're talking about it out there. And as we also thought like we should have come and have this conversation with you. We're looking forward to see you through your comment section. Tell us also what you think about this. What these Africans are doing is something that can be encouraged or not, because we all know that these are false allegations or accusations against the government of South Africa. So what can South Africa government do so far in order to stop these kind of things? Because people who are behind all this, they are actually planning to make South Africa look like Zimbabwe. So therefore we need to do something about it, isn't it? So guys, I believe that will be all for now. We're looking forward to see you again in our next video. For now, continue to be yourself. Be good, be kind, have respect for everyone in order for you to be respected. May God bless you all. I'll see you again very soon in our next video. Ciao, ciao.